Hi guys, this is Daanesh here from GN Tech, and we're here in Abu Dhabi today checking out the cameras on the iPhone 12 Pro
and the Huawei Mate 40 Pro. This footage
is on the camera and the mic of these devices. Check the audio out, see what you think. But before we jump into any further video, let's check some pictures out.
Right, so here's the rundown of the specifications of both of these smartphone cameras, quite packed with features from both primary cameras, and likewise here's a look at the front-facing sensors as well, from which you just saw all of those video samples. Let's start off with this first image taken from the main camera lens. While both of these smartphones have done well to replicate the blues, it seems like the iPhone 12 Pro Max is better at capturing detail. For example, the details in the tree in the background, but more noticeably the subject. While the Huawei Mate 40 Pro softens minute detail here, the iPhone is able to retain all of it far better, and in the process expose the subject better as well. Moving to this next image, we can take a look at both of these smartphones and how they handle dynamic range. With the sun behind the subject in both cases, both of the phones are doing an excellent job. There's this nice contrast going on with the Mate 40 Pro's image, but the differences are nothing as stark as the first images that we compared. But the differences show up once again when comparing this image. With a lot of green and blue in this picture, it's evident how the iPhone keeps the colors natural looking, with them being more true to life. On the other hand, the Huawei Mate 40 Pro saturates these colors to a great extent, skewing how the scene looked in reality. Away from all of the scenic images captured using the main camera lens, let's take a look at both of these smartphones when it comes to using the other lenses. So for example, this photo thanks to the dedicated lens for portraits on both phones. Looking at the overall image, color differences aside, both smartphones show a good result. However, if you were to crop into this image, you'd notice discrepancies with edge detection. These are much harsher from the iPhone 12 Pro Max and less obvious from the Huawei Mate 40 Pro. But more importantly, look at how the Huawei softens the chair and its details, whereas the iPhone is able to maintain all of that detail much better. Similarly, this is a look at each smartphone's ultra-wide-angle lens. Firstly, we notice how the iPhone gives you a wider field of view, but secondly, the colors between both smartphones are also different. Huawei's Mate 40 Pro seems to retain the more saturated look we saw in the other pictures, but let's crop into the images and see how each phone is doing with detail. To us, the Huawei Mate 40 Pro seems to be doing better here with detail, in this case looking at this light pole. Away from the crop, it's time to look at the same scene from each phone's wide-angle lens. The story remains identical, with the iPhone being able to capture the scene's color more realistically, whereas the Mate 40 Pro tries to bump up color saturation in certain areas of the image. For example, the flooring here seems a lot more desaturated compared to the rest of the image, whereas the iPhone is capturing the warmth of the sun on the floor much better. Zooming into the image at about 2x, we see a similar story, but at the full 10x zoom, the Huawei Mate 40 Pro's image is much better. It handles the tree details, the background glass shimmer, and the sunlight much better than the iPhone 12 Pro Max. In fact, it can zoom in even further and the result still looks better than the iPhone 12 Pro Max's 10x zoom, which means Apple does have some ground to cover when it comes to the zoom department on their smartphone. With daytime samples addressed, let's move on to some nighttime images, this first one of the Atlantis Hotel here in Dubai. While the dark sky of the iPhone is accurate in terms of colors, some may prefer how the Huawei adds some blue to the sky to make the photo stand out even more. With night mode, the effect is more pronounced from both of these smartphones. The sample from the Mate 40 Pro almost looks like it's sunset, whereas the iPhone's image is a bit darker. Side by side, we like how Huawei's image looks overall, and we'll crop in further just to see how both of these smartphones do when it comes to detail. Here, the iPhone 12 Pro Max is clearly doing a better job, so the results are quite interesting. So let us know what you think. Which one would you pick? Let us know in the comments down below. With another night mode sample, it's much of the same story. Notice how the sky is bluer on the Huawei phone, whereas it's not so much on the iPhone. But with the Mate 40 Pro, the greens are heavily overemphasized, whereas they seem to be natural on the iPhone 12 Pro Max. As a result, the overall picture from the Huawei Mate 40 Pro looks brighter, but with differing elements in a typical picture, it's hard to say which phone is better, whether you prefer the natural look of the iPhone or the brightened up one from the Huawei phone. It all comes down to personal preference. Now, this image was taken without night mode, and quite clearly it looks like the iPhone is struggling to retain the essence of the image. In this situation, the iPhone 12 Pro Max's colors actually seemed off, a first for the iPhone in this comparison, whereas the Huawei Mate 40 Pro was able to do a very good job. This is the same image now with night mode, and here definitely the Huawei Mate 40 Pro sample stands out, not just for detail, but also how the warmth of the colors is captured. We're gonna round up with this last image, once again without night mode, where the Huawei just seems to get the colors a bit more spot on, and with night mode it just seems to be more of the same. While the Huawei Mate 40 Pro's enhanced brightness in certain cases may be over the top, it seems like in most situations it does do a desirable job. That's all for the pictures though. Let's take a look at videos now. This is 1080p footage from both smartphones at 30 FPS. There are a few deviations in color, and we must also note that the Huawei switches to an ultra wide view by default for videos. In terms of stability, we think the Huawei Mate 40 Pro just nudges it, but overall things look pretty similar, pretty identical. This is a look at 60 FPS footage at the same resolution, and here you start to see the Huawei Mate 40 Pro struggle a bit with focus hunting, which doesn't make for a good effect overall. It's similar when moving to 4K footage, where things are similar at 30 FPS, but at the higher 60 FPS option, we see the Huawei Mate 40 Pro once again struggling with a similar effect seen in the previous 1080p 60 FPS samples. Also, do note Dolby Vision is turned on the iPhone 12 Pro Max, although it doesn't seem to be making much of a difference when it comes to daytime video capturing capabilities. At night, things are even more harder to distinguish. Colors from the iPhone are definitely more true to life, but the performance from the Huawei Mate 40 Pro is not bad by any means. Bumping up to 60 FPS though, the Huawei samples look to retain more detail in the dark at the expense of a green tint in the video, which is something that you do not find on the iPhone and is something that isn't really desirable. This is a look at 4K footage now at 30 FPS, where quite frankly neither phone can be faulted, but it seems like the vibrancy of Dolby Vision is clearly coming through in this case in comparison with the Mate 40 Pro. This is just more pronounced when recording at 4K 60 FPS, which is not just more stable on the iPhone, but also better looking when compared to the Huawei Mate 40 Pro. So that was a look at the cameras on both the Apple iPhone 12 Pro Max and the Huawei Mate 40 Pro. Let us know what you think about the results down in the comments, and make sure to like and subscribe for more videos. Thanks for watching. This was Vaibhav, and I'll see you in the next one. Adios.